You're listening to the Valley Current.
Hello, Jack.
Hey, welcome into part 2. This is where you get to ask all the questions. So go ahead, shoot away at your questions, and I'll be the subject of your podcasting, and you can make this your podcast.
I can make this mine. Okay.
Make it myronic. You can make it a myronic.
Well, it's always myronic. I mean, how we connected was quite myronic, don't you think?
Yeah, see?
It's just like the Alanis Morissette song.
Yeah, no, seriously. I could tell you some really funny stories because I do think as people get older, they do identify more of the ironies that have existed in their lives. So my mother's favorite refrain is how she took care of my brother for 40-something years. And I said, no, Ma, it wasn't 40-something years. It was 60-something years, right from birth. And she said, oh, you're right. I don't know why I keep saying 40. You're right. I guess I keep thinking about him as an adult. And I said, yeah, he never really left home. He never actually really left home. Maybe he left very briefly for a very brief period of time. He had his own apartment, very briefly. So it's quite an interesting story because I do think at the end of the day, there's a much bigger story about how some people never really leave home. Some people are returning home.
It is. There's a whole thing of, I think one of the most powerful things that I learned in my journey was this really allows people to come from a place of compassion versus a place of judgment. But again, I'm always referencing Dr. Brian Weiss. He's brilliant, but it was more brilliant and profound, the messages that he would receive through his patients and then through his own messages when he was finally ready to accept them. Because truthfully, when you receive messages just for yourself, you question your sanity.
Well, let's make this something that you can actually take advantage of, because I actually queued up Brian Weiss's book. The summary of it is available. This is the extended summary of Many Lives, Many Masters, which you are like the biggest endorser and promoter of. And
because it saved my life. I would be dead if it wasn't for this book.
Right. But now let's look at this, because the way it's summarized is he relates an experience that completely changed his life. And he talks about the treatment of Catherine, one of his patients with whom he developed hypnosis therapy after having failed for almost a year with conventional methods of deep trance. The young woman remembered her previous lives and freed herself, blah, blah, blah. So the book is really kind of this extra extra third, sixth, seventh sense kind of thing. And of course, the part that really made me laugh, because I've got the book, but I haven't had time to read it, and you had recommended it to me a while ago. But when I went to the summary, the part that's really funny is it says, well, you could also read Heal Your Body, or you could read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I thought it's funny to see what other books are out there, or Unfuck Yourself. Or, of course, there's the classic Emotional Intelligence 2.0. So he's in kind of an interesting group of books that all got summarized together. And I thought, maybe I should just get all of them and read all of them, or at least read the summaries of all of them and then decide whether to read all of them or not, because they really have had a big impact on you.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it was all thanks to Myrony of how it was given to me, so I pay attention to that. I pay attention. And then, of course, the number that it's like connected around my numbers, like that book, I swear, the first time I read that book, I really said, if I would believe in one religion, this is it, because it summarizes everything pretty much all together. And it's just a beautiful understanding. And I found even more powerful is that it was written by an agnostic psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. I mean, what better explanation of like something, you know, like he couldn't explain it, but the book is so beautiful. And he literally risked his entire career to write this first book. And so I commend him on, you know, taking the courage, but it was like he couldn't deny what happened. And then he ended up writing 5 more books. But what I was saying in regards to your brother, one of the most profound things that Dr. Weiss, he was given this one very specific message, and he said, Earth. He received this image of Earth being a one-room schoolhouse, and we're all at different grades. So your brother, for some reason, chose to stay being a 5-year-old. He didn't really want to move past that. Some people just choose to have an easier life. But the thing is he didn't really accomplish much in his soul journey, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think my brother got stuck in 3 different ways as I think about his life. One is he never really launched what I would call his education. He did something really stupid in high school, which is he drove a Volkswagen. I don't know if he stole it or borrowed it or he was fixing it. I mean, who knows exactly, but he drove an old Volkswagen Beetle as a freshman or sophomore in high school up the front staircase of the high school. And the principal at the high school kicked him out that very day because they said, he's just someone that wants to be kind of like Evel Knievel. He wants to basically be a showman. And, he said, I asked him, well, why'd you do it? He said, well, because someone dared me to do it, so I did it. And I didn't think it was a big deal because the staircase was all concrete. He didn't break the staircase, nor did he break the Volkswagen. In fact, he did something that probably, if they caught it on video, the video would have gone viral because it was a big staircase and it was a small, old Volkswagen Beetle that went
right.
Stairs, and I guess he went down the stairs. And, of course, that's in a lot of films, these cars that go upstairs and downstairs in, Europe, they have all these staircases. So he was ahead of his time on that, but he never went back to high school. He essentially stayed a high school dropout. And as a result, my parents sort of felt bad for him. I kept telling them, force him to get a job in a kitchen washing dishes and start at the bottom because he loved food and he loved cooking. Yeah, people start at the bottom and make their way up.
Oh, yeah.
And, he could have probably been a pretty good person in the kitchen, but they were like, no, we're going to give him a job. And I think that was the beginning of him just, I don't want to say milking them, but basically saying that, I deserve to be taken care of for the rest of my life. And I don't think he really ever launched. So his education didn't launch, his job prospects didn't launch. And then, even to the day of his death, he was talking about how, he could have been so rich if woulda, coulda, shoulda, whatever the.
Right. And that's the whole thing is that he chose not to, he really chose not to pursue anything, and I mean, at the same time, that's okay. He'll figure it out the next time around.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, kind of at the very end, it was very clear that he had given up the will to live and he actually was disconnecting,
Yeah, well, that's one of the things. It's like, when our bodies are, I mean, there's a really beautiful book called Mutant Messages Down Under. And it's based on a true story about this Aboriginal tribe in Australia, and they really show how they literally manifest anything out of nothing. And like there's such a highly evolved I don't even want to say, society or whatever, but like where they are in their spiritual awareness is just so powerful, because when you have absolutely no fear and you're just truly living from that place of, some say God, some say source, some say, what universe, whatever, but recognizing that and not living with any fear, it really is amazing the miracles that will happen in life. So that's another book down the line you'll have to check out.
Right. I mean, do you, I don't think Richie ever kind of imagined another life, but you clearly imagine that there will be eventually another life for him, for yourself, and that you've previously had a certain number of lives, and you are sort of, all your activities to some degree are based on other lives, right?
Yeah, I believe so, because living and dying one life does not make any sense. It doesn't make any sense why some people are the way that they are, and like why some people are given, you know, basically a silver spoon and living the life of luxury, you know, like where would that come from, you know, from a higher perspective? However, if we can look at things karmically, it makes a lot of sense. Like one of the most powerful things, maybe I shouldn't be saying this now, but another book of Dr. Weiss is called Same Soul, Many Bodies. He had his patients not even go just to their past lives, they would go to their future life, because in quantum physics, you know, the past, present, and future is all just now. We just don't recognize it as anything but, you know, we can only understand one frame of thinking. But if you look at the past, present, future, all as, I forget how they said, not just as a line, there was a really good description of it. But he had this one patient who was, in her current life, she was Jewish, and she hated the Muslim culture. So he said to her, well, let's figure out where this hate comes from. And so does a past life regression. What do you think she would be? She was a Nazi.
Really?
How did she come back? Jewish. So she discovered that her hatred would just constantly be incarnating in that until we can come from a place of love, acceptance, understanding, and, you know, truly compassion. Isn't that interesting regarding karma?
Well, let me ask you a more general question, even though I thought you were going to ask the questions. I'm sort of provoked to ask, because I'm actually now scanning through the summary of Brian Weiss's book, and you're kind of the expert on all of his books. This first book about Many Lives, Many Masters, it's really kind of a case study of this woman, Catherine, who talks about her many different lives and how she discovers them. Wait, let me ask the question. Under hypnosis, have you thought about going under hypnosis with Brian Weiss? Because I imagine you would probably do very well, right, with him?
No, I actually don't do well with hypnosis. I've tried. I've actually been to two of Brian Weiss's seminars. I've met him personally.
Okay.
I absolutely love what he does. You find out in another book, there's a small amount of people who aren't able to do regressions. And maybe at some point I'll open up, but I learned so much by just the knowledge of these books. So I didn't need to heal myself by actually doing the regressions. I actually healed myself by just understanding the awareness of it. And that's actually, you know, that was what I wanted to talk to you about, was my new little spiritual coaching. I call, you know, my Myrony mentoring, but I've created a program that's called Unlock Your Blocks in Life. And it's to show people that basically it's like holding up a mirror very, very slowly until they're ready to look into it and realize your higher self shows everything that happened in your life, good, the bad, and the ugly. So how Brian Weiss, how this came about with Catherine is that he didn't believe in anything. And what happened is she did all this, you know, hypnosis, and nothing was working, and she didn't want to take any medications, and she had all these phobias, all these fears. Like one of them was a fear of drowning. So he finally says to her, go back to the time that it first started. And she goes back to like biblical times, and she's caught in a flood. And as soon as she lived that, her fear of drowning went away. And so then,
I mean, there's a lot of little stories, even in the summary, which is only about 50 electronic pages. I'm sure Brian Weiss's book is, and by the way,
the book is really a short book. Like, to listen to, it's an hour and 28 minutes long. Like, that's it. Like, it's not even.
Well, the
summary
is really fast. I just scanned through the summary. And by the way, Brian Weiss is a significant guy in his 70s now. He was born in 1944 in New York. He graduated as a psychiatrist, which means both a medical doctor and an expert on psychology, from Columbia University and Yale. And those are pretty tough places. I have my MBA from Columbia, which is a really tough business school. And Yale, of course, is like a great Ivy League university. It was actually the place I wanted to go to law school, but of course I couldn't get in. It's really hard to get into Yale. It's almost, to some degree, harder to get into Yale than it is to get into Harvard. But what I will say is that, this guy believes in hypnosis, which a lot of people don't believe in because of what you just said, which is some people do not do well with hypnosis. And the reason I know this, just to give you even more of a kick, is that during the period after my first wife, of course, left me for the next door neighbor. That's a long story. My second wife left me for Europe, but then eventually died of pancreatic cancer, which is another interesting story. But one of the first people I dated as an independent, widow, I guess was I widowed yet? I might not have been, because we were separated while she was in Europe, was this woman who was very much into hypnosis. And she was a big believer that hypnosis could completely change anyone. And she was a total believer that everyone should have, like, if you have a doctor and you have a dentist, you should have a hypnotist, and you should have like an herbalist and a massage therapist and a, pedicure, manicure, so the number of people around you that support your daily life. It was like I said, what are you, like Michael Jackson or something? I remember saying, and she said, yeah, everyone should be like Michael Jackson. I said, that guy's a freak. And, this was back when he was still alive. So it was a number of years ago. And she said, no, he's got it totally right. You have to have this entourage around you. And being a hypnotist, and so I always sort of thought that was a little wacky. But there are people like this guy, Brian Weiss, who gives it a respectable name, right?
Oh yeah, and he's the one that actually put that out there. Like, by him risking his career, he was the one that opened the door to past life regression therapy. And to me, it's the only thing that actually makes sense, because if we don't understand where these issues have come from, and here's the thing, if you want to look at what's your own personal karma, if you see the same thing happening over and over and over and over in your life, chances are that's the lesson you're trying to learn. For me, apparently one of them was suicide, because suicide has entered my life way too many times. And once I finally understood it, then I was able to fight it even more. And that's why it's so important, and why with That's Myrony, I'm bringing this awareness, because I have no idea how many lives it could save if they just had the awareness.
Yeah, so let me read chapter 23 summary of the Brian Weiss book. And by the way, this is all in real time. I did not script this. We just went from a discussion about Brian Weiss to me finding the entry, which resulted in me buying the chapter or buying the book. And I'll just show people. So we're doing this in real time. It's not scripted, which I think is great. I'm a big believer in doing this. But here's the extended summary. I'm bringing it on the screen. Self-Learning, chapter 23. And this is pretty good. I mean, I think this is a really good statement here. It says, as said by the master spirits in the last session with Catherine, The psychiatrist continued to learn, but knowledge came to him in different ways, the most frequent being dreams. In this way, he recalled some of the teaching of the masters and discovered others. The most outstanding, one, wisdom is reached very slowly. I think we'd all agree with that. And my interactions with my mom, who's 90, is revealing a lot of little nuggets of wisdom by her. Like, for example, when she was in the hospital the other day, they were thinking she had some issues with her gallbladder, but she was complaining about other pain, and they inserted something into her private parts as part of, whatever the test was, and she screamed. And she said something really funny. I mentioned this to you in the prior podcast, that I'll tell you the story because I found it funny. Maybe it's not Myronic, but it was funny. She said, and all of you nurses that are here, all you young girls, you think this is really enjoyable. I'm sure you're going to do it tonight with your boyfriends or your husbands or whatever. But believe me, when you get to be 90 years old, it hurts and you don't want to do it anymore. So enjoy it while you can. And she was saying, and she had all the nurses howling, like literally howling. I said, Ma, you need to do stand-up comedy. We need to record this stuff. She said, yeah, and they all think it's funny, but believe me, when you get to be 90, you don't want to do that stuff anymore. And she said, I don't think your dad didn't try, in his 90. It was pretty funny. So wisdom is reached very slowly. I thought you'd get a kick out of it. The practice is what gives meaning to learning. Human beings neglect balance and harmony. So this is point 2. They live excessively. I think this is absolutely true about America. They eat too much.
Oh, yeah.
They ask too much. They want too much. They want too much money. Everything is done in excess, and nature is not like that. In nature, everything is or should be in balance. And then number 3, greed, ambition, and fear move, meaning motivate humans. With these engines, these 3 engines, greed, ambition, and fear, the annihilation of humanity is imminent. And remember, this book was done a number of years ago, as was the summary. And we have coronavirus, which seems to be annihilating a lot of humanity and a lot of the planet because of the lack of balance. So this is a very prescient set of statements. Point 4, happiness is rooted in simplicity. Point 5, humanity is immortal. In each life, we learn lessons. Point 6, no one is better than another. Men should feel this. Men and women should feel this and practice helping others. We are going towards the same, let me just read the rest of it, the same destinations. We'll meet each other on the same plane. Those dreams were not interpreted. They are always present in the life of the psychiatrist who reflects on them. His mind was open forever, and this is the great message that he tries to spread, especially to his colleagues, referring, I think, to Brian Weiss as someone who learned from Catherine, and who's now revealing all of this to his own colleagues and then to the rest of us through this book. So I just found, even as I scanned the summary, this chapter 23 reached me in a variety of different ways that said, yes, this book is definitely worth reading and probably listening to as well. And then I could see how it's kind of the Constitution, the underlying, charter for what you're bringing to the public through That's Myrony, which he's not done. You might say he has remained the academic and you're much more of the clinician who's saying to everyone, hey, no, seriously, because academic medical people don't necessarily deal with the day-to-day stuff that you're
but see, that's the thing. He reinvented himself. So the books, he became a spiritual, he is the head person in this field that he created back from the 80s. It's just that now, he's in his 70s. He doesn't do as much work. He still does workshops. He's actually supposed to be, if it wasn't for the coronavirus, he was going to be in San Francisco in November doing one of his workshops.
So you've got to get him. So you've got to get him on your podcast for sure, right?
At some point, for sure, yeah.
You're like a disciple. You're like John the Baptist. You're like, if he's Jesus Christ, you're like you're like one of the main players here, writing the Bible's New Testament or something like that. And, you know, the truth is a lot of these people publish books, and, you know, there's a very funny place not far from the hospice where my brother was that sells all this merchandise that gets dumped after it can't succeed on the bookshelves. And occasionally when I visit my brother, I would go there to sort of buy him something, to bring him a gift. And it's always like a sort of like a discount store, because he never really wanted to read. So I didn't want to spend a lot of money on expensive books. But there's amazing stuff that you'll see on those bookshelves. It's this place called Ollie's. I wish it existed in California. I would send it to you because you'd be amazed. It's like going into, I don't know if you remember years ago, Barnes and Noble and these other places had these ginormous bookstores. It's like that, but for all the books that failed in the market. So all the failures. So in that book, in that big bookstore, which has really now become more of a everything that's failed. So if there's a set of earphones that failed, the earphones, it's got everything. It's like the failure central. So everything in life that tried to become successful but failed. So I'll give you an example. So for example, this is an iPhone. This immensely succeeded. iPhone 10 was probably their best player. Why? It was really thin, it's the right size, it's powerful, it's all these things. However, there's a device that you can lay the iPhone on and it will electronically charge. This device, for some reason, failed. So you can buy this device for $10. It used to be $100.
Wow.
If you went to the iPhone store and you asked for, I want the device you lay the iPhone on for it to charge, no plug. You don't have to plug it in. This is just drop it.
It's expensive. It's
expensive. But if you go to Ollie's, you'll find the failed version of it, which is still going to work. It works perfectly. But for some reason, maybe people didn't embrace the fact that it was round instead of square. I mean, I have no idea why it failed, but you'll find it at that store, and you'll ask yourself, as I do, because I see inventors all the time in my practice, why did this fail? Like, they must have made 1 million of them. And of course, Ollie's has a big inventory of them, and they'll tell you, buy more, we'll give you a big discount. You can buy 10 of them and we'll give you like $20 off. You can give them as Christmas gifts. People think you're getting a $100 product. They're getting something you bought through this essentially liquidation outfit. That's what they are.
Wow.
They're a liquidation outfit. And they've got stores. They've got stores all over Florida, but their main half of the store is essentially shelves and shelves of books that failed. So you know how many Trump books are there? There's like 50 different versions of Trump books. Everyone's written a Trump book. Everyone that's ever worked or been connected with that guy has written a book. Most of them have failed. And even some of the ones you think didn't fail, like the recent one with Melania, the Melania tell-all, that's already there. That's already there. I guess that's failing. I guess for some reason that's failing. So I don't know where this connects with him, but I think the truth is that you do learn a lot over time. And when someone like you follows him in a book that probably is at Ollie's, his book is probably at Ollie's.
No, it's not. His book has sold millions. No, people still buy this book.
The fact that the fact that it got summarized means it must have took off.
Yeah, he's been on Oprah several times.
Oh, okay, so, well that'll do it right there.
No, he has not. No, he's super successful.
So you're saying if I searched, so if I got off this, I'll stop this share. But if I search for YouTube, Oprah, and Brian Weiss.
Yeah, Brian Weiss. Yeah, he actually has a really interesting, I just found it actually not that long ago. That was how he knew during these sessions that like all of a sudden this was the truth. Like there was it's a very short clip with Oprah and him talking, and she does like a little mini video of him and his life, and it's really powerful.
On Oprah's show, it's probably on YouTube.
Well, I actually found it I didn't find it on YouTube. I just Googled, I don't even know how I found it. Dr. Brian Weiss and Oprah.
Well, here's something. Let's just do this test because we have a few minutes of time. Sometimes this works. Sometimes this works. Sometimes it doesn't work. And there's always, of course, a goofy ad that you have to go through. But hold on a second. I mean, this is unfortunate. I love the version of this that doesn't have the goofy ad, because then you're sort of like spreading the ad around. It feels like you're spreading a virus. But let's just do this for a second. Let me see if I could skip this ad.
It's a really good, I mean, granted, it's 7 minutes long. It's not super long, but it's really interesting. I think there's one that's even shorter than this.
I tell you, I never really liked Oprah's interviewing style. And I know there are different people that criticize me for it. I don't find her to be any of the 7 essences that I talk about. I mean, she's been immensely successful, and I'm sure if she listened to this, she would tell me to go F off. But I don't think she actually reads. Like Bill Maher, I actually do think reads the book before he asks any question, or he gets a really good summary.
No, she's an avid reader.
You think she does?
Oprah is an avid reader.
I mean, maybe she's just too wordy. Maybe she's just too wordy for me. I like people that ask very crisp, short.
Yeah, but she's not
questions.
meant to be asking crisp, short questions. People want the. No, she's great at what she does, and that's why she got to where she was. And
wow, I can't believe it. I guess I'm in that minority of white men who just are so jealous of her. No, but I have to say, I find some of her stuff way too wordy and uninformed. Frankly, uninformed. She wings it a lot. But I stopped watching.
I mean, she may wing it a lot because there's only so much time in a day, and when you're being asked to do all those things, it's really hard.
Right.
But I do know she's an extremely avid reader, and that she got people to start reading again because of Oprah's book club.
Right.
That was a huge success. And
what's further clear is that if you get onto Oprah, which maybe we send this audio to her and she so hates me that she lets you get on her show and she says, but I won't ever let that Russo guy get on. That would be a good reason for this audio to exist, because you are this next generation of practitioners of what Brian Weiss is explaining. And
well, I'm not. I mean, truthfully, I'm not a practitioner, because then I'd have to be a past life regression therapist.
No, in a practical sense, not in any license.
Yeah, well, I just didn't want to say as a practitioner, because that's the type of practitioner it would be. And there's many people I can actually introduce you to, one. But
let's talk about people that get the message across with comedy, right?
Yeah, well, I always
thought the best way of teaching and the best way to create memorable moments in teaching is there's some comic relief. So absolutely the best teachers could probably also be stand-up comics to some degree. And in fact, I think the best presidents, I'll even go further. I think Ronald Reagan was a great president, not because he was brilliant as a president, but because he made people laugh with some of the quippy remarks he made as he was degenerating into dementia. He also put some things together, or maybe his writers put it together in a way that made for comic relief. And I think he did a really good job at communicating as a result of that. And to date, I don't think any presidents have come close to him. I don't think we went through the whole list of presidents from, George Washington right up to Donald Trump. I mean, there's only been 45 presidents, not really that many men. There's only maybe a dozen that are memorable. Think about that. There's only a dozen of 45 that are memorable.
Right.
And there might even be a question about whether Trump will even be memorable 10 years from now. People may want to forget about him, but there's only a dozen. And Ronald Reagan is clearly a memorable president because he had such quippy lines and executed them so well without appearing to just be totally scripted.
I think, adding humor, because otherwise, especially when people are going through hard times, it's nice to see the humor. And that's actually with Myrony, is that even though there might be some really, really dark times and you feel like you're in the middle of a tunnel and there's no light getting out, if you pay attention to the signs, chances are you're going to see something. That's kind of like the encouragement to keep going. And
but don't you think to some degree you've generated something that's more innovative than Oprah's ever done? Like, let's just take That's Myrony, which you've generated off of a lot of little events that have occurred in your life. I know Oprah has had a great show, but like, what brilliant idea has she innovated? She's not.
It's not even, but see, we don't have to look at what she brilliantly innovated, because she was just her own innovator with the talk show. What she created about the Oprah show versus other talk shows, she was her own innovator in that sense. And to that, I give her all the credit for what she created. I think that what she did overall was beautiful. It educated a lot of people on different levels. I mean, like I said, Oprah's book club, thousands, millions would be reading.
So you would disagree with me that she was just in the right place at the right time? She
may have been at the right place at the right time, but you know what? She worked hard as hell too. And so I respect that. I respect that completely. I also heard her say, so Eckhart Tolle, who's one of her favorite books, is A New Earth. And are you familiar with Eckhart Tolle?
Yes.
Okay.
I had the pleasure, just to tell you, I had the pleasure of being with a guy who was kind of an expert follower of him. And he had like every audio cassette that guy's ever done. And he literally, we were visiting a colleague together who was in from London and had come into Los Angeles. And he said to me, would you go with me to visit this colleague? And I said, yeah, let's get a Southwest, I just said to him, let's get a Southwest flight or something. We don't have to do anything expensive. He said, no, we need to drive and you need to listen to these tapes with me because we need to talk.
Oh my God.
And I did the full, how many hours? Like at least the way we did it, it was at least a 6-hour drive. He would stop occasionally to smoke a cigarette, which he didn't do in the car. So I thanked him for not doing. And by the way, this guy is totally into working out and muscle building. He's got like no fat on his body, but he does smoke, which, he does it as kind of a guilty pleasure. So he would drive an hour, we would stop, he would take a cigarette break, 10 minutes, and then I would drive for an hour and we'd be listening and then stopping the tape. So it felt like it probably was 6 or more hours, that drive. And it was quite an interesting, and then another 6 hours back. So it was quite an interesting, and it was memorable. So, and he said to me recently, we have to do that again. And I said, well, I don't know. I don't know if
I'm sure about that.
He said, in a polite way, I said, can we do it in kind of like a faster car? Or can we do it without all the stuff? But anyways, yes, so I did listen to 12 hours worth of tapes of him.
Oh my God, that's a lot.
By the way, I was highly critical of him too.
I like Eckhart Tolle, but he's not it's great. I'm not putting anything down. I just don't think you learn the way that you can learn about from this higher self perspective. That makes a lot of sense. But it's funny because Oprah and Eckhart Tolle did a podcast of A New Earth, and they did a chapter summarization for each episode of the podcast. And what I found really interesting about Oprah is that she said that at some point she literally got on her hands and knees and prayed to God and said, use me as your servant here on earth. And I will say, if that's really true, and then she became one of the most powerful women in the world to share these beautiful messages, because, she actually opened a lot of doors of spirituality that was not religion, because she would bring these authors on She would expose the world to these authors that at that time you couldn't find really easily.
Yeah, I mean, I think she made it for Dr. Phil. I think she made it for Dr. Oz. I think Donald Trump is very jealous of her and wants to have, if Oprah has an Oprah channel, I don't know if she does anymore, but Donald Trump to me very much wants to be like the white male Oprah. I don't think there can be a white male Oprah. That's the problem. I don't think there can actually be someone that's white and male and Oprah. I mean, I think it very much is Oprah.
He's also an egomaniac. He's, you know, like he's all ego. And
there is, just so you know, because I don't know why I'm thinking this is relevant, but I think it is relevant. There is a great Bill Maher that suggested that if Oprah really had guts, he doesn't say it this way, she should have run for president. Bill Maher, I
agree. I would have
Bill
voted
Maher
for
said,
Oprah for president.
If you have guts, and you could say Bloomberg had guts and then more or less proved that you can't just be smart and rich and win. You have to have more than that. Bloomberg was smart and rich, but he couldn't deliver on what might be called the quip ability of President Reagan. The way Reagan did it was amazing, and Trump was able to do it in sort of an anti-Reagan way, because oftentimes his quips are not funny and they're very selfish, if you ask me. But Bill Maher argued, I'm going to just see if I can find this for a second, because Bill Maher, I wish you were able to hear the audio of this, but Bill Maher argued that Oprah should be president of the United States. And I don't know why it's not coming up, but I thought if Oprah really wanted to be a hero, she would have said to Biden, move over, I'll let you be my vice president, or even better, let me be your vice president, but agree that you're going to leave after 2 years so that a black woman becomes president, because that's probably the only way a black woman could ever become president of the United States. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I totally agree with you. Absolutely.
Just a second, I'm going to repeat it. I'm going to paraphrase for you. Only this person checks all the boxes. Who does Democrats have that we know can beat Trump? It's not Joe Biden. He makes a very funny quip that Biden basically is brain dead, which I agree with.
Yeah.
A typewriter is running for president. It's pretty funny. This is funny stuff, right? I'll send you the link to watch. I'll send you the link to watch this. She's a 3-syllable woman in a 1-syllable country. That's really good. He said he's criticizing all the candidates, all the Democratic candidates, saying these guys are never going to make it. He has his cardiologist on speed dial. He said, I like Mayor Pete. Is America ready to be led by a gay teenager?
Oh, geez.
I got to send you this link. This is really funny. You have to watch this. This is probably the best. One night when I was self-medicating, meaning smoking marijuana, the only person who's a sure thing is Oprah Winfrey. And the crowd goes wild. The crowd goes wild. He is jealous of her because he got pushed aside for her show. Like she basically pushed him aside.
Right.
This is where I wanted to get this checklist. She checks all the boxes. African Americans. She'll make black poles rise like a Kardashian. African Americans, women. I think she would have won hands down. I think he's right about this.
I agree. I always used to say that.
This is what it would be like if Oprah were on the ballot. Everyone would be rushing to vote. Oprah doesn't scare white men either. So anyway, I play that because I think to some degree, if Biden loses, which seems unlikely, people are going to go back and say Bill Maher was right. Oprah should have run. And what I think actually did happen is for a very tiny second, she thought about it. And she thought, man, that is going to be a lot of work. And that's, I'm going to criticize her because I think when you're that powerful and that rich, and you have an opportunity to say to Bill Maher, go on the show and say, Bill, I would take that if, and then you have to fill in the if Bloomberg was my vice president or Biden was, I mean, I didn't even like Biden. I mean, I would have put her, maybe Bloomberg with her as VP, with Bloomberg saying, hey, look, I'm just gonna do 2 years, and then I'm telling you up front, Oprah's gonna be president because I'm gonna resign after 2 years. I'm getting too old, but I need to use my money and my power to fix this Corona thing. And Oprah is gonna be trained under me because I ran New York City and I could train her. I think they could have made a powerful pair with each other. The other way to flip it around would be Oprah runs for president and Buttigieg is vice president. Oprah says, look, I'm going to be the first black female president, but I'm telling you right now, I'm only staying for a couple of years. And then this young gay guy, which otherwise will never become president because he's too young and too gay, the point that Bill Maher's got the right political instincts. And when I criticize her, and maybe this will really get you on the show, because if she listens to this, she'll say, man, that Russo guy's got his head up his ass. If she had guts, she would have done the Gandhi-like thing and said, I'm going to rise to the occasion. I'm going to use like 100 million of my own billions of dollars. I'm going to basically destroy Trump by entering this ticket with whoever is the right person. It wouldn't have been Bernie Sanders. It probably would have been either Buttigieg or Bloomberg or some combination of what might be called otherwise white elites who would be like, yeah, we're going to make Oprah president. I do think Biden is brain dead and too old for this job. And I'm not sure that Kamala Harris would do as well as Oprah would do in leading the country. Actually leading the country, not governing the country, leading the country. This is just a way to say that I do think someone that's more in touch of what's your purpose for being on Earth would have said as Oprah, and I hope you're listening, Oprah, because, you know, that's Myrony deserves to get on your show, regardless of what I'm saying about you, is you would have risen to the damn occasion and said, this is my moment in time and space to do this, and I'm going to give up half my wealth or maybe even 3/4 of my wealth to do this, but it's going to pay off for the benefit of not only just Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter and everyone else in a way that's going to set an example for the rest of the world and bring Donald Trump down in defeat. And there's no doubt to me that that would have worked, because look at Biden, who's otherwise like brain dead, and he's doing really well against a guy that seems to be imploding at this point. But man, he looked like he was imploding the last time. Last time it looked like he was imploding. They had all those tapes about him and, you know, grab her by the so-and-so, and it didn't matter. He kind of rebounded. So who knows what's going to happen here at the last moment. I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming out about Hunter Biden and all these deals overseas, and it really looks nasty. But anyway, I'm talking way too much, and you were supposed to ask a lot of other questions, but now I'm out of cycles and out of gas because it's going on 10:30 my time. But I'll give you the last word, given that I so much of the time talking about Oprah, but you so love her, and I see her as, God, you could have done so much more. Now, maybe Biden will win and it'll be happy ever after, but I have to say, I don't think Biden is going to lead the country. I really don't. I don't think there's no charisma with him. I mean, maybe it needed to be Oprah and Michelle Obama, and the bonus is you would get Barack as kind of an advisor. I mean, maybe it should be 2 black women. I mean, and not just a black woman and some young gay guy, you know, it's amazing to me. Anyway, tell us your last remark on Brian Weiss, and I think I now better understand where he fits into your thinking.
I mean, I think that for people that are looking to find their purpose in life, or, you know, that just feel really lost, and they maybe it was because of religion that they were brought up with, or no way of looking at something of a higher power. And I really don't know what it is to not have that connection to a higher power. But it's like, if you want to explore that, there's 2 incredible books, Many Lies, Many Masters, and there's also another one called Proof of Heaven. And that's also written by a neurosurgeon. But
what is the second one? Who's the author of the second one?
Oh God, it's Doctor. He's got a name that I never can remember, but it's called Proof of Heaven. And he was a neurosurgeon.
Oh, I know that book. It's not Proof of Heaven. It's
yeah, it's called Proof of Heaven.
Oh, is it Proof of Heaven? Okay, yeah, I've got that book too. Yeah, that's the guy that had like a heart attack or some stroke.
No, he ended up having bacterial meningitis, and he had like 10% chance of living.
Right. He thought maybe like some fly or something flew into his ear or something like that.
But the thing that was so interesting about that book is that he was agnostic also, and he explains from a neurosurgeon perspective.
Yeah, his name is Eben Alexander.
Yes, Eben Alexander. I don't know why I can't remember.
Look how fast. I'm pretty good at this. You have to give me a little. You have to give me a little bit of credit. I can do this stuff pretty quickly. I mean,
yes, you can.
Look at this. Come on, throw me a bone here.
There you go.
And
yes,
then you get
Dr.
to see
Eben.
that there's actually an ebook version of it, and this one doesn't have a summary, but it was on the New York Times bestseller list. And the reason I read it is because of the near-death experience point that he made, because I went through that.
Right.
And you may have gone through that too, and we could do another podcast about that. But
we're gonna have you on the podcast and talking about that one.
Well, I'm gonna give
That's
this.
Myrony.
I'm gonna give this. I guess he did another book called The Map of Heaven too, so I haven't read that.
Oh, I gotta.
Did you know that?
One out. I did not know about that one.
Oh,
no,
good. So
I gotta.
I have to send you this page, and I have to send you the link. And he's a relatively young guy. That's the other thing too. He's actually a relatively young guy.
His story is fascinating, where those 2 books are literally scratching the tip of the iceberg, and that if people want to dive deeper, there's so many things, but it really is what resonates with you. But trying to look from that higher perspective and just know that from a soul perspective, your higher self chose everything that happened in life so that you cannot be the victim of your own life. But
let me add kind of a amplifier to what you're saying, which is when you're given the opportunity to a door that opens, like the door just opens, like when Bill Maher really pointed to why Oprah could easily win. He opened the door, or there was a door that opened. She could have grabbed that. She could have run through that door and really propelled herself. And I don't know exactly like what all the thinking was, and were there family issues, and are there health issues, and are there skeletons in the closet, and are there tax returns that are under audit? And, there's always like a messy part of life that people think, oh, if the bright light goes on me, they're going to find out I've got some pimples and I've got some acne and, I've got a rotten tooth in the back of my mouth. This is not true for me, but, people say this stuff like, oh, brother, they're going to find out, that I really am not as smart as I seem to be, I'm not as scripted or not as well prepared. I don't know what all the things she went through, but I have to tell you, the person that has extreme courage, like Gandhi, saying, I'm going to drop my law practice. He was a lawyer. Gandhi was a lawyer. I mean, Gandhi was not a spiritual man. He was a scrivener. He was a lawyer that wrote in longhand. I mean, he became a leader because he saw the opportunity to lead, and he made that happen. He was not someone that was as well positioned as Oprah was to become a leader, but he gave up what otherwise was sort of a barely lucrative, but somewhat lucrative law practice.
He recognized his calling in life. And when that calling comes.
So what actually happens, I hope someday Oprah tells a story, and maybe she'll do it with you, and she'll explain it with you and say that Russo guy's got his head up his ass. But it would be a really good thing, because I have to tell you, I don't think I'm alone in the view that she completely missed out on expanding her human potential, even if she were to fail at running for president. I think she'd look back and say it was the best thing I ever tried to do. It was like climbing Everest. I don't think anyone that climbs Everest, even if they fail, unless they die, maybe even if they die, they like succeed in their own head. And I took up the challenge. I saw this video tonight that was an amazing video about this ultra marathon, and it's been tried by thousands of people, and only 14 people have completed it. But every year, because it's 60 hours of running, 60 hours. And the guy that created the course, he's like, every year it's slightly different. It becomes more challenging. And there are people that come back year after year and they realize their own human frailty that, hey, I'm getting slower and I can't really get up the mountain anymore, but I'm trying. And I think those people represent the best of what Americans do really well, which is they pick up the mantle of challenge. And I think, frankly, and this will really get Oprah pissed at me, but I'll say it, I think Oprah's become a little bit too fat, a little bit too happy, yes, and a little bit too, life is good, I'm not going to complicate my life for Washington, D.C., and who wants to live there anyway? And, I don't want to be subject to attack, and I kind of like the cushy life that I have. So, Oprah, if you're listening, you've got a good defender of you right there in Alysha Myronuk, and she's got That's Myrony. And I hope she puts you on the show so that you can rebuff what I have to say, because you're such an enthusiast and such a believer. But maybe if Trump wins, Oprah's time will come in the next 4 years. So maybe we have to give her credit that she's just waiting for the opportunity to really hit it out of the park. Because I believe if Biden loses, Bill Maher's going to say, I told you so. I told you needed a black woman. You needed a strong black woman. You needed a rich, strong black woman. And that was Oprah. And that's all it is. You can't even say it's Michelle Obama because she's not rich. She's not necessarily that strong. And she has this sort of negative of having already been there, done that, and not really she didn't really enjoy it. According to all the reports, she was like, this is not for me. I want to get out of here as soon as possible. Although I guess they still live in DC, but he's been relatively quiet about, I haven't really seen him campaign in any big way for Biden. And I really don't think he thinks Biden is worthy, if you ask me. He had him as VP, but it was kind of like a big yawn, if you ask me. What did he do? I kind of agree with Trump. There's not a lot that you could say he really did, at least from my perspective. So anyway, it's been fun. I hope we do another version of this. I'm going to send you the link to this so you can decide what you want to do with it, because it's really something you might want to use on your show as a way to get Oprah to listen to it. Because if I send it to her, she's going to say, well, who's the Valley Current, and who cares about the Valley Current? I don't care about it. I'm not in Silicon Valley. She, by the way, is in an area, very ritzy area of Santa Barbara. And I do know people that are her neighbor. There. Yes, I do. So we are, Oprah, we are almost connected. Just to let you know, we're not as disconnected as you may want to believe, because I know people that are in your neighborhood that know you. And if you listen to my podcast, you'd be able to identify some of those people, because some of those people have been on my podcast. So that's just a small world thing.
That's Myrony.
That's Myrony. Anyway, I've got some other stories for you, but I'm out of time tonight. I hope you enjoyed.
Yeah.
I certainly did.
Thank you so much.
We did review two really good books. Proof of Heaven is definitely, and you should get that guy on That's Myrony, because I think he would have a lot of interesting stories.
Oh yeah, because that's how you get impact, because you create shows that can be so magical.
That's really good. I'm glad we spent the time. Now I understand better, and I'm glad you got me started on reading Weiss's book, because now I'm really motivated to do that. So thank you for doing that as well.
Yeah.
You have a good evening, okay? Take
You
care.
too, Jack.
Good night.
Bye.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.